Welcome to Coffee with the Sarlos. We are your hosts of the show, Karen and Kelly Sarlo. Whether you're struggling with grief or you just need answers, we connect you with spirit to find relief, clarity, and direction in life. We can help you move forward.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ireland. So I went to Ireland to find my next names.
Okay.
Clodagh, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Clodagh and Maeve.
Okay.
And oh man, the names in Ireland are super hard to say for me. So those are the ones I could pronounce.
We think.
And I want to point out to anybody that's listening to this for the first time, those are not the names of the clients. They are made up. Mm-hmm. I just pick names and I'm going all over the world trying to find names. So we keep confidentiality in all stories. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Clodagh is passed over. Maeve is my client. And Maeve just simply starts at the very beginning and just says to me, I'd like to speak to Clodagh. Oh, and she had asked for medium, Kelly. So I knew Clodagh had passed away. But she didn't say anything about the relationship or what she was looking for. And when I asked her if there were specific questions, she said no. She just said that she was there just to sort of hear from her and that she didn't have anything on her mind. And Clodagh says, well, she says, I do. I have a lot on my mind. She says, I want to apologize. I want to thank her. She says, there are so many things that I've come to understand about my own self and who Maeve was in this friendship. So I said to Maeve, this is your girlfriend. And she goes, yeah. And I said, well, that's a validation. I didn't know that. She could have been your mom, your grandma, your great-great-grandma. Like, you know, that's just a validation. Oh, yeah. She says, yes, of course. You're going to give me things and ask me if it's correct. And I said, that's right. We'll do that. And we'll do the conversational part. And she says, this is great. Go. So Kelly, these two women are friends for decades. And during that period of time, Clodagh sees Maeve go through a divorce. And then she says, so you can say that because that's a validation. And she says, and I should have gone through one. So I say that to Maeve. And Maeve goes, that's correct. Oh, this is a validation. She says, thank you. I understand what you're doing. You're saying some things that have to be factual. Yes. So Maeve goes through the divorce. Clodagh never goes through the divorce. Admits that she should have gone through a divorce had she been working and getting healthier. And Maeve goes, yeah. And she says, that's good to hear from Clodagh because that was something that was put on the table off and on frequently during those decades of friendship and eventually had to let it go. I had to stop trying to be supportive when Clodagh was thinking of leaving her husband and trying to move through that process. I had to stop. And she said, at first I was fully behind her and I wanted to be the supportive friend. I wasn't bashing her husband, but I was trying to tell the truth. And she said, eventually I stopped offering anything because I realized she wasn't going to leave and that these were just patterns and cycles in their relationship and that I didn't understand the attachment styles to understand what that pattern was. But eventually I figured out Clodagh wasn't actually going to do anything, so I had to stop talking. And I had to stop spending the mental and emotional energy that goes into supporting a friend going through that. She says, I had to end up figuring out I couldn't fix it. And also no longer could I support it. Mm-hmm. And Clodagh says to her, I get it. And Maeve goes, oh, thank God. So Clodagh says, I didn't fully understand it on earth. She said, I didn't understand what was going on in the friendship when you were like pulling away, when you weren't being the person that you used to be all the time. And she said, I went through all kinds of different feelings where I kind of pulled away from you because you pulled away from me. Mm-hmm. And Maeve goes, yeah. She says, and I thought that was mean. For a while, I thought, what the hell is she doing? I have no other choice here. I'm the one between a rock and a hard place. So I'm going to do what's best for me. And Clodagh was like, yeah, I get that now. And that's why I'm here to apologize. I get it now, what type of mental and emotional load that is on you, to be repeating every couple of years, or sometimes once and then several months later within 1 year. And Maeve says, it's good to hear that. And I'm really glad that she understands it. And I'm really glad that she's apologizing for it because of the behavior that she did after that. Not the apology, Karen, or Kelly, for the, that was funny, not the apology just of what she was going through, but the lack of understanding what she was going through, the lack of understanding and the lack of compassion for Maeve when she wanted Maeve to have so much compassion for her. So she says, man, did I ever demand a lot of patience, compassion, empathy, intelligence from Maeve, and I didn't show up to do any return and do the work on my own part, but I expected it from her, and then I was mad when she wasn't giving more to me than I was willing to give to her. And Maeve says to me, oh, she says, this is really good for me to hear because I have come to understand that's okay. I understand what I did in that. I understand she needed it. But now I'm looking at some of my other relationships and I don't want that anymore. I want more reciprocity. I want somebody that's actually going to get what reciprocity is in a relationship. So she says, I'm understanding some people are not as capable, like Clodagh. They're not as capable. They're not as aware. So she says, so I sort of have friends now in different kind of categories and different levels of friendship. I might not expect quite as much from them, but that's because I do more movies, go to dinner with a group, we play games, we do different things. It might be a friendship where there's more activity, and that's not the level of connection. And that's okay because I'm coming to realize that not all of my friends have to have 10 out of 10 level of intimacy. There's going to be ones at different levels because we're in a group, and sometimes you just want to stay in the group. That's fun.
I also think it's important to note that the capability that you were talking about for reciprocity can vary for different situations, right? So someone's capability might be limited by their actual time, right? Available time to give to you, right? Because reciprocity is the ability to give and take. And if someone is genuinely limited on time, what they are able to reciprocate to you might not look 50-50, might not look similar to what another friend is fully capable of doing for you, right? For others, their capability is limited by their emotional capacity, right? Or the amount of stressors in their life, which we could still argue is emotional capacity.
Yeah.
So, and that might be through no fault of their own, meaning life just handed them a lot of stressors all at once. And that sometimes really is a limitation in capability because they have taken on stressors, right? Where they like the drama, need the fix, limit their own capacity because of what they are willing to take on in other areas for the sake of martyrdom, for the sake of codependency, etc., right? So you can have, I'll say, altruistic capacity. You can have emotionally stunted capacity. You can have life demands a lot on you capacity. And I think it's important for for all of us to be able to grow that self-awareness to understand what our capacities are, right? What our limitations are. Is that within my control to change it? Or is this an outside control? And is it just right now? Right?
Yes.
I've turned to some friends and said, I can't give you what I've been giving you for the last little while. This friendship can't look the same as it always has because circumstances have changed, not for a lack of desire, not for a lack of love for you, but just right now, this season of life.
I like how you're saying that, Kelly, because like a season of life could be that you're raising kids. It could be that a career's taking off. It could be a career's not, and you're working like a bugger, taking courses, going to school, or it's just that your emotional state because things aren't going well means that you feel anxious all the time.
Chronic pain. a parent falls ill
Oh,
and you're
yeah.
caretaking.
Yeah.
You're in transition of moving, right? Like capacity, it's important to be able to identify all those things. And the necessity for humility, like, is probably something that we should talk about too, because when we don't have humility, the willingness to admit we have limitations, the willingness to see them not as faults, but just potentially sometimes as facts, it's so important. If I'm unwilling to admit to friends that I can't be there for them because my people pleasing is getting in the way or my shame is getting in the way, then I can't be truthful about what I can give. And I'm going to end up hurting both parties or all parties.
Like what you're saying, because it requires some level of self-awareness.
It requires a lot of self-awareness.
To be able to assess what your needs are and how you're honestly functioning.
Yeah.
Because some people think they're functioning fantastic and they're not. And that can cause that problem, which is something that happened in the relationship between Clodagh and Maeve. Maeve was understanding more and more the things you're talking about. Clodagh was not. And so there was, according to Clodagh, there was a division there in Maeve's growth and a lack of Clodagh's growth, where she was staying stuck. So I want to go back. I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. Thank you for saying all of that and helping people understand it. And maybe not just listen to the story about Clodagh and Maeve, but where you actually allowed people to check in with themselves instead of just listening to the story, like it's story time. But actually going, whoa, taking a break and going, whoa, the story just became my story. It just became my issue.
It should.
Right.
We're supposed to find pieces of ourselves in these stories.
Yes. So Clodagh says to Maeve, pardon me, Kelly, I have to describe it a little bit. Maeve asked Clodagh some questions and during the session, and I would get one-word answers. and that, that is just so not channeling that we get one-word answers because we get context, we get a whole bunch of things with it. It might take time.
So that was more likely how Clodagh behaved.
Yes, but I didn't catch it at first. I was like, what the hell is happening? The spirit guides are shutting down. This has never happened before. Where's my head spirit guide? I'm like Karen losing my shit. What's happening? And then I see one of the spirit guides, or I don't know how to describe that. You see them, you feel them, you know their energy, right? Like you just know they're there. And I just have this knowing that, oh, this has nothing to do with my spirit guides. They're here in full force. They didn't go missing on me. So they're all looking at me and I feel all of that love and energy close to me. And it's like, oh, this isn't a caring problem, which I think is really cool to describe how to know it's not a Karen problem. And then I said to Maeve, oh my God, Clodagh gave you one-word answers. And she goes, oh yeah, for a very long time. So Clodagh says to me, oh my God, I have got to apologize. I gave her one-word answers all the time. And I said, Clodagh, like, did you know you were doing it? And she goes, no and yes. And she says, like, honestly, Karen, she says, all through the decades of being a friend with her, at some points, absolutely not. So, and if I went back into the old me, no, because it was the old me. So if I was stressed in any way, I'd go back to the one-word answers, but I wasn't aware I was doing it. If I wasn't in as much anxiety, then I could become more aware of my one-word answers, but often I felt shame that I was doing them. And sometimes it wasn't shame. It was like, oh, I've got some control. Oh, this feels good because I don't have control in the marriage with my partner. I feel I'm not happy with where my emotional state is there and the communication there, but she wasn't willing to look at the fact that she was giving one-word answers to her partner. And she said, could you please explain to Maeve that I gave the one-word answers to her? But Karen, I did it at work to coworkers, and I was a trainer at work. And I gave one-word answers to staff that were being trained for jobs. Of course, that's not going to be thorough, so they're going to make mistakes. And then I am going to blame them for the mistakes because I'm immature, and my position is above them. So if the owner's going to come to me and say, hey, did you train them to do this? She says I was going to say yes, but I was never going to explain that I never gave enough information. So I said to Clodagh, what the heck happened at work that Maeve would know about that it would be a great validation? And she says, oh, eventually they just kept cutting my hours down. She said they just kept reducing hours until I just realized I really just don't even have a job.
Wow.
And she says, because, you can't live on working 4 hours, like a half day a week. She says they just kept cutting me back. And she says, and I was angry and I went into my superiority, what do you call that? Superiority? Like years of service? Seniority, sorry.
Though they're kind of synonymous when you're acting like she is, but.
And she says, you can tell me that because she will absolutely be able to validate me telling her all of these things about how I had problems with all these young people, those millennials, though that generation X, that generation Z. She said, like, I blamed it all on them. And I really went into it about them with her because she didn't know what was going on. But she says, I want to say today that behavior is what caused me to lose my job. And I lost my own job. She says, I can say I fired myself, but I would never have said that on earth. Never would have acknowledged what I was doing in that I was holding so much information that everybody caught on that I was the problem. It was not all these new hires. It couldn't be all these people. They couldn't show up in interviews and be super smart and totally capable and confident. And then none of them can do the job.
I disagree with that, but I hear the story.
Yeah, well, yes, because we're not generalizing. We're speaking specifically about these people. We're speaking specifically about Clodagh and the whole situation there at that work environment where the owners get to see that she's the problem. But man, Kelly, does it ever take decades before they see that it's Clodagh? Which can happen because Clodagh can turn around and do her own job, right? So Maeve says, oh my goodness. She says, this is really, really valid to hear because I also just stopped talking about work. I stopped listening to her talk about all of these people and all of the situation. And I would just say, how's work? And I would wait for her one word answer. And then I would move on to something else. And Clodagh says to me, yeah, she says, and I know now that at one point you wondered if you were self-centered because you were willing to show up in the relationship and actually get into more than one or two words about work, about relationships. And she says, but Maeve, she says, you were getting healthier and healthier. So yeah, you were willing to show up and share shit. You were willing to show up and share because you were being authentic. She said these one-word answers lacks authenticity. It lacks integrity. And Maeve goes, what a great way of wording that. And she says, Clodagh says, I'm here to say to you that I now understand that you questioned your own behavior. You wondered if you were self-centered until you realized that you were becoming healthy, that you were learning patience, you were learning how to ask better questions. You were like, there was a whole bunch of things you were learning to do that was all of your growth. And I was staying stuck in where I was, but I was seeing that I was losing the friendship before I died. And I said, oh, did you die before? Like, is that how the friendship ended? You died? And she said, yes. She said, Maeve never really walked away. She just understood my limitations, whether they were the ones that I chose, the ones that I grew up in and were repeating. But she went to other friends to get more needs met. And she was willing to do some of the fun things with me or have some of the conversations, but she wasn't invested in them. So she could sit there and say, how is this? How is this? How is this? How is that? Let's do this. Let's have fun. And she would go to do her fun part, but she wasn't invested in that kind of way. She was getting her cup filled in other friendships, other relationships. And Clodagh says, wow, did I ever miss the opportunity to be a better person, to be a better friend, and to really have a healthier relationship with somebody that could have really helped me do my own growing.
Yeah, I'll just throw in there for anyone who didn't understand all the opportunities, like also to be loved.
Yep.
Right? In her limitations and her one-word answers and her non-growth, she missed the opportunity to be loved by someone, to be known, seen, heard, understood.
Which was what she was complaining to her husband about. But willing to stay in the marriage.
Right.
Until she died. So she says to Clodagh, Clodagh says to Maeve, I didn't understand what the heck was happening in my life until I died. To see that I was in this marriage and giving the one-word answers and staying stuck in something that was that unhealthy, having you as my girlfriend who was getting healthier, where I was trying to say to my husband, get healthy, go to therapy, fix yourself. And then Maeve was doing the very things I was asking my husband to do. She was being healthy and saying, I'm engaged and I care about you in this friendship. Get healthy yourself, Clodagh. And Clodagh was like, no. So she says to Maeve, I am so sorry. I can see this triangle. I can see my position. I can see that everything I wanted in the marriage, everything that I wanted in my life wasn't in the marriage. It was in my best friendship. Mm-hmm. And then I refused to actually do what was required of me to be in that friendship, in a relationship that I actually really wanted.
That makes sense to me. If you've decided that you're staying in a loveless marriage, if you're staying in a relationship where your partner is emotionally stunted and unwilling to do the growth, and you desire to grow, those two things will constantly be in conflict. Because the more you grow, the more intolerable emotionally stunted people are. I'll just put that out there. Mm-hmm. So if the decision is, I'm staying in a marriage, I believe marriage is supposed to work, I believe you're only supposed to get married once, whatever the conditioned thoughts are about your relationship to this married person, then your growth is a direct threat to that belief system. Even though you say, I want to grow and I want you to grow. If they're not doing it, you are also stunted. So then to turn around to your best friend relationship and see growth, that also indirectly or directly, however you want to look at this, threatens your ability to stay in your marriage. So you have to consciously or subconsciously push that other person away in order to stay.
So Clodagh, and we get near the end of the session, and Clodagh says to me, I understand the change in our friendship, the desire on your part to be with more healthy people that were at the same level as you, where there was exchange, where the energy, everything that is exchanged in a relationship is what you're giving and that you're getting what you receive. For me,
That you're also receiving what you give?
Pardon me, yes. Thank you. And that the amount of time you wanted to spend with me was limited. And that it got less and less. And she says, I understand now, rightfully so, that it declined. And she says, I didn't understand it at the time. And I questioned it. And Maeve didn't explain much. And she says, and now I also understand why you didn't explain much. Because I wasn't willing to change and you knew it. So you were also not willing to explain it to me because that was just going to fall on deaf ears, or where I made you the problem. Like I made Gen Z, Gen X, all the younger people at work the problem, my husband the problem, where I made everybody else the problem but me.
And that's shame. Like we don't go to blame another person unless what we are experiencing internally is shame.
Exactly.
Right? So, and it's interesting that people say fall on deaf ears, because I don't think that's ever truly the case. It falls on that person's humility, right? Or that person's feelings of humiliation, and then they take it and turn it into a defense mechanism.
Oh, right.
Right? Like our ability to hear it, I don't think really changes. We're dissociated or we dissociate. Like we still do hear it on some level, right?
Right. So at the end of that session, she says to me, my ultimate goal today is to apologize. My ultimate goal is to say that I see you, and that on earth, I was just seeing me. Seeing my own problem, or not seeing my own problems, just always trying to be in a defensive stance. And Clodagh says to her, she says, I know that I did the things. She says, I know that I did the cards for the occasions, the gifts. Like, I know I did the things, that you can do. Buy the gift, remember certain dates or whatever. She says, but my effort was very minimal. And she says, and I'm understanding how very minimal my effort was to maintain things. And I realized that you figured that out, and then that you invested your own time in other relationships. So she says, the last thing I just want to reiterate is that I see what you did and I understand everything. And she says, and I want to acknowledge that it was healthiest for you, and that was what was most important. And me learning my lessons, because I didn't get them on earth and I'm getting them now, this is important to me today to show up with more responsibility, more self-awareness, having done the work, to be able to return that energy today to say thank you for the things that you did, and to say that I understand them and appreciate them now.
It's big.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And super validating too, right? Like for Maeve, to hear I did the right thing for me. I did the right thing in my authenticity, right? Even if it was hard for that person that she loved while she was on earth, that's still direction for her, which is great. Well, thank you. That's a tough story. I think that'll resonate with a lot of people. Thank you for listening to Coffee with the Sarlos. If you enjoyed the show today, please be sure to subscribe on your podcast platform and leave a review. New shows will air every other Saturday.